talk about the weekend, because Donald Trump, in true Donald Trump style, and I've said before, I don't agree with everything, and there are people in this country, in fact, a majority, who don't think he was right to say don't join the initial strikes, but the man is just incapable of sticking to anything. Donald Trump put out, the UK, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer, we don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Now, if I was Starmer, Isabel, right, and I had a different view to Trump, leadership is about sticking to your guns, excuse the pun, not him. Every single newspaper reporting that he got on his hands and knees and phoned up the president and basically apologised for 20 minutes over the weekend, which is why people think he's spineless and incapable of being in the position he is, right?
I mean, the thing is, this is the worst of all worlds, isn't it? Yeah. You're right that the polling, I haven't actually examined the polling, but I understand that the polling is pretty heavily in favour of the UK not being involved. But you would expect that, wouldn't you? I mean, whoever really votes for war?
Sure.
Nobody wants wars. No. And unfortunately, it is at times like these that leaders lead, and the rest of us have to go along with that. And we don't necessarily get to choose whether we're involved in wars or not. And as the world gets smaller and more interconnected, you are pulled into a war whether you like it or not. So in a sense, I totally respect the polling and respect that people don't want to be part of this. And I believe that Starmer instinctively is a peacenik. He doesn't want to be part of this either. And so as it happens, that is the popular position, but it doesn't mean it's the right position.
It's interesting for me, because I think what's caused over the weekend that poll, and I can only give you my opinion, is that Donald Trump said everybody assumed it would be like Venezuela. No, it's not going to be. It's day 10, and this is going to drag on, and other people are going to be drawn in. I'm with you. I think we should have stood shoulder to shoulder with America. But here's the really interesting thing. My point today is, Starmer doesn't get anything right. Stick up for what you believe in. He had a great opportunity. You're a political animal. He had a great opportunity this weekend with his comms team when Tony Blair came out and said, you should. I would have turned around and gone, yeah, and look where it got you, mate, which is why I'm sticking to what I stick. But he doesn't say that. He says, oh, Tony's got his opinion and Donald's... There's nothing about him that makes me think, yeah, stick up for what you think, mate, and I'd respect you more.
It's just completely insufficiently robust on every level, isn't it? Yeah. Take a position, articulate it, and bring people with you. And he's done, as always, the worst of all worlds, which has been a bit on the one hand, but on the other. Our relationships are across the Gulf and, of course, in the US are seriously damaged. Now, I don't think they're destroyed, those relationships. With different leaders, they can easily be put on a new footing, but it has done tremendous damage. The US now knows that we're not a reliable ally, and they are just going to plough on without us. That's the reality.
I couldn't agree more. I'm interested, obviously you're in Dubai, the Gulf states. I can sit here every morning and rail against the fact that we can't seem to get a boat there, HMS Dragon, and when we do want to send an aircraft carrier that Trump doesn't want, that needs a bloody French escort because apparently it's not operationally ready. The whole thing, whether it's Starmer's performance or the state of our armed forces or how we work diplomatically, is hugely embarrassing, isn't it? Really embarrassing.
It is. So here in Dubai, my partner Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform, flew out here on Friday. No problems getting here. He's just left. No problems getting back on a commercial flight, by the way. All this nonsense about people needing private jets to get out. It's complete and utter twaddle. Emirates and Etihad, the 2 UAE national carriers, are flying a proper schedule now. Of course, there's a little bit of disruption here and there, but no one needs to be getting private jets out of Dubai. Nobody needs to be leaving in some kind of incredibly complex arrangements. Frankly, I'm not even sure there's any need for any repatriation flights. I guess there will be a number of people whose flights were cancelled and they can't afford to buy another flight. I get that. And in times of so-called war, insurance policies get invalidated. But I don't see any need for any kind of panicked arrangements right now. It's very calm here indeed. But the point I was going to make is that Richard had a meeting here in the UAE with one of the Emirati ministers here. And, you know, she didn't hold back. It wasn't privately. I mean, I think she would be very happy for us to say, you know, that they are deeply dismayed by the fall of the United Kingdom and our place in the world and the lack of leadership shown.
I couldn't agree more. I keep coming back to, I don't have to agree with your politics, but I want a leader to lead. I'm not interested in you trying to be, at such a crucial time, all things to all people, which sums up everything, whether it's standing in Westminster saying to the Muslims supporting Ramadan, that's fine. I didn't do it to get a round of applause. Whether it's then saying to his Labour backbenchers, I'm not doing it. Oh, I am. Oh, Trump, I'm not. Oh, I am. Dithering, just dithering, and no, we've said it on so many occasions. I mean, how embarrassing is the state of the, I mean, you know, HMS Dragon and now that aircraft carrier, the Gulf states and our American allies just must laugh at our incapabilities. And by the way, I don't hold Starmer fully responsible for that. We've been cutting defence for years. One of the things that surely, whatever the next government is, reform or any other ilk, right, they need to understand we need to have a defence capability that looks after our interests, don't we?
Well, we also need to look as if we can at least match what our other European allies are doing. And these are countries whose economies are certainly no stronger than ours. You know, how come the French are able to get their assets off the ground, get to be part of a response to this crisis? How come other countries, the Italians, the Greeks, are all over this and we're just kind of whimpering on the sidelines? It is completely embarrassing, and none of us yet know how this is going to play out. No. You know, it is quiet here this morning in the UAE, but you know, I'm only in one part of this huge crisis. I don't know how it is in the other Gulf states this morning, and we're a long way from any resolution. You know, Trump said he's not interested in Britain turning up after the war is already won. I mean, it isn't one, is it? You know, that is...
Well, that's the criticism, and that's why you'll end up with that poll here, which needs to be given attention to, genuinely, because, you know, the assumption's probably the wrong word. Trump made a big thing. We're going to get in there, we're going to take out Khamenei, and the people will rise. That hasn't happened. It's day 10. There's no sign of people rising against authority. In fact, I was reading and watching some terrible footage where state television is saying if you go outside and dare to do that, we'll shoot your children. That's the reality, but how you make that come through is incredibly difficult. However, I've got a little present for you for a Monday morning, because Richard's gone. I've got a little present for you. Starmer, improving his ability, has decided to make a TikTok video. Have you seen this, Isabel? This just about sums up our Prime Minister. Please enjoy, everybody. This is Starmer's latest offering. I'd like to point out the quality, the loud music and the nasal thing is nothing to do with talk. This is all to do with Labour HQ. Have a listen, have a watch.
Our number one priority is protecting our people. And that's why, long before the US-Israeli action last weekend, we had already deployed additional military capabilities to defend our region.
Point out that basically Starmer was stood there watching a few helicopters take off and planes. Isabel, apart from the music, to me, that sums him up. That is him trying to say, well, I was ready, I sent out two... No, you didn't. Stop lying, man.
Jeremy, there's no apart from the music. You do realise what that music is. It's
money for nothing.
Straits. Who would use Dire Straits for a video like that? Because Dire Straits is exactly what we're in. The headlines write themselves, don't they? I mean, I love the song, but, you know, Starmer's in dire straits. Come on, guys. The comms team, seriously. Something else, but not dire straits, really.
Do you want, inappropriately, the best joke you'll ever hear about that?
Go on, then.
Dire Straits. Has anybody ever worked out what would have happened if Chris Rea had been their lead singer? Do you think he'd have been called Chris Straits or they'd have been called Dire... There, you see? You see
Oh,
what...
dear, oh, dear.
No?
Trust you to bring it down to the lowest common denominator.
Being told off now. The other story that I want to do with you today, which has infuriated me and everybody who listens and watches this show. Ready for this? Flying the English, the Scottish or the Union flags on streets by this government has been linked to tools of hate. It's a leaked draft of the government's new social cohesion strategy. It warns that the flags were used to exclude or intimidate and that the extreme right has tried to turn symbols of pride into tools of hate. It comes as Labour also plan, Isabel, to appoint an anti-Muslim hostility czar. I've only got one thing to say to that. What about an anti-Semitism hostility czar? Or are we ignoring Jews as usual in this country?
Don't think we need any of these czars. What we need is to be proudly who we are, proud British, and be sure of our identity. And the flag symbolises that. And if we can't any longer proudly fly our flags, then we are truly lost as a nation. And you know, when this stuff really, really matters, it really matters at a time of war, when a country is under attack. Luckily, the UK is not at the moment. But if you don't have a shared identity, if you don't have clear rules about what is and what is not acceptable on our streets, then as a country, you will fall apart and you will be completely exposed to the enemy. Whatever that enemy may be, you will be completely and utterly vulnerable and weak. And this is why the route that we're going down, allowing all this absolute nonsense to infect our public life, is really dangerous. I have to say, I am extremely concerned that we're actually allowing pro-Iranian regime marches on the streets of London, on the streets of the UK. People will take a different view of that. They will say, well, you know, it's freedom of protest. I think there's a line to be drawn. When the world teeters on the brink, there is a line to be drawn with these protests. It is time we re-establish who we are and what we allow. And some of that is uncomfortable. But in very dangerous times, I think there is a limit to what people should be allowed to do. And dividing the country by going out and championing a regime that is that murderous, that says something very, very worrying about the types of people that we have brought in or allowed to spread their ideology to our own people.
I don't know where to start or where to finish, really. I'm going to start with the flags. I mean, how does this government genuinely think the British people, sun readers, people that listen and watch talk, are going to be feeling when they get told that flying your flag is a tool of hate? Why is every other country... Why have we got marches on the streets of London with people waving, you know, anti-American flags, burning the Israeli flag, flying the Palestinian flag? Why are our priorities all wrong on this?
It does seem bizarre. You know, the flag, the Union flag, is a source of pride up and down the country. We've seen people flying it. You know, there's obviously a big display. You know, people putting them on motorways, putting them on lampposts, and the fact that someone in government, you know, official level, whatever level, thinks that this could be deemed as a tool of hate is quite incredible. And I wonder whether, when ministers see this document, whether that is totally just scrubbed out. This
shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. My concern is the mentality that thinks it's a good idea to say that anybody flying the British Union or St George's flag is racist. Look, Ryan, what happens? You'll cover it. TalkSport, our sister station, will cover all of it. The World Cup's coming. So you're going to tell me that if you drive down the road with your Union Jack out the window, the things they put on the front, and people... is that going to be deemed racist, or is he going to hold that back for 4 weeks? That's what I don't get about Starmer and his cohorts. It's ludicrous, man.
Yeah, this is why, when it actually hits reality, but again, as you say, it's that mentality of actually thinking this through in Whitehall, coming up with this idea, pulling it out there, you know, even just writing it down just seems absolutely incredible. But as you say, you know, we've had the Paralympics, we've had the Winter Olympics, we've got World Cups going on, we've got Euros, we have all sorts of things on the horizon. And how can you actually make it a tool of hatred? It just seems incredible. But
if you are going to say that, have some bloody balance in the fact there are Palestinian flags on marches in London. There are people burning the Israeli flags, and I see footage of a man walking with a Union Jack past an Iranian or Palestinian march the other day. He gets told by the police to take it down, and they're allowed to walk. These are hate marches. I don't understand our priorities. I'll tell you what I wanted to say as the deputy political editor of The Sun. This humbling phone call that every single newspaper goes on about today. The Mail front page, Starmer's humbling phone call to Trump. I mean, Trump was pretty outspoken about Starmer. I have acknowledged on the show this morning, Ry, that there are, it seems, a large number of people, even a majority in this country, who disagree. And so my frustration with Starmer is probably even stronger today than ever before, because if you believe a position politically, if you're a leader, have the balls to stick up for it. But what's he doing on the phone? Who instigated this humbling phone call at the weekend? Did he beg Trump? How did Trump treat him? Do we know?
Well, at the moment, we had this phone call late last night. And one of the key things to come out with it seems like they did discuss the sort of military cooperation. But what we've got here is we've got two things going on. We've got the underlying special relationship, as we call it. It seems that it is still there in its full blaze of glory, official level, intelligence sharing, this kind of thing. But at the surface of this special relationship, which is actually really, really key, is that we have this tension between the two. Normally, it's Donald Trump who's throwing the barbs. But look at what Sir Keir Starmer said last week in the House of Commons. He said that the special relationship, we should not be hanging on every word that the president says, as if to say the special relationship runs actually deeper than that. But because of this tension, what does it mean if the king is meant to be going to America in April? What does it mean for that? Does that tour then get postponed?
Well, Labour MPs are demanding that the Foreign Office postpones the state visit and says that, Trump's attacked the government and Starmer and the king shouldn't go, but the king's a constitutional monarch and shouldn't get involved.
Yeah, I think the king will go. I think the king is there. Look how much Donald Trump respects America. Look how much Donald Trump loves the royal family. And I think if the king doesn't go, if that trip is pulled, we may have this, this military conflict at the moment, but just think what we do, our trade with America, the trade deals, the tech deals, all this kind of thing, the business between the two countries, I think it would be seen as a real snub. So
I think you're right. I think that the special relationship, the sharing of information, the trade deals, all of that maintains itself. I think there's a disconnect, quite rightly, with the two men at the top. And the thing is, I just want to go back to what I was saying. I don't have to agree with Starmer, but if that was his position, have the balls to stand up to Trump, because we all know that somebody like Trump, who many people call a bully, I'd say he's just a he would respect him more if he said, no, Donald, I'm not backing down. That's my country's position. It doesn't have to affect it. I'm not playing ball with you. You'll have to accept my position. But one gets the feeling from afar that people don't do that with Donald Trump, see? They don't do it.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. You have a position, but then you try and sort of ameliorate it. You try and work around it to make sure that we don't look at odds with him. I think what happened, probably the worst thing the government didn't really have that position where they could say, well, you can use our bases for something like refueling, or maybe to a lesser extent, and maybe not launching the offensive attacks. But I think we could have been a little bit more, could have been a lot more accommodating when it comes to America and launching their attacks. So I think politically, again, Keir Starmer was just far too deaf on the requests on the special relationship. And you had Tony Blair yesterday. Whatever you think about him over the last 20-25 years, he says that America, our greatest ally, and you've kind of got to be with them.
But you know what, right? If I was Starmer's comms chief, I'd have used that. I would have said that is a green light for you to go back out and say, listen, rather than toadying up to Blair and Trump and every person who, disagrees with him, I'd have said, with respect to the former Prime Minister, she took us into an illegal war, and that is what I'm trying to avoid. So you button your cake hole, because I've got the British public on my side for a change. But no. I'm going to crawl to Blair. I'm going to call to Trump. And so everybody goes, what is this man's position? There's nothing inside him that makes you think that he's definitive in what he's saying. And that's the real frustration, I think, mate,
Yeah. And last week we had Keir Starmer saying, you know, we're not going to be letting America use our bases for offensive attacks. But we are still doing all this other stuff. They're still going to have F-35 jets that they're used. We're still sending, you know, warships, or trying to send warships to the regions, still sharing intelligence. So halfway in, halfway out. And again, you don't please anyone. You don't please, you know, politically your own MPs, those Green MPs you're trying, those Green supporters you're trying to win over, and you annoy, you know, the most important man in the world, Donald Trump. So
I think that his whole theory, Starmer, which is why I think he's so woefully inadequate in his position, is he tries to please all the people all the time, and he actually ends up, well, annoying most of the people most of the time, and that's just in essence who he is, and that's the frustration. Can I just have a quick line from you as the deputy? I know, well, honestly, the army chiefs, whilst we're teetering on the edge of World War III, are busy launching a review. I'm sure you've seen the story. They've emailed all soldiers and dragoons and everything, to asking whether they think it's okay that men can apply cosmetics and wear makeup in combat like women. The gender-free changes could see men wearing makeup, hair extensions, painted nails and earrings, whilst the rest of the world's trying to sort this out. That is more woke than the blob, isn't it? What's wrong with the British Army now? God.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like forever that, you know, the British Army have been used to wearing camouflage cream. It now seems they're going to be more used to wearing mascara. So I think some people need to buck up their ideas and just dismiss this survey straight away. Forgive me, I'm not the expert like you are. I've heard all sorts of things. I heard Trump say it will be over in 3 days. I've heard people say that the Iranians are spending 25 grand for every drone, whereas it's costing millions to try and knock them down, that actually there's been miscalculations. And the next day you hear, oh no, it's a matter of days. What's the truth? Does anybody know the truth?
Well, Jeremy, you ask the right questions. It's jolly hard to give the right answer. I mean, I think the reality is that Donald Trump, with 3 objectives in mind: 1, to reduce Iran's capacity to hit Israel and US bases with ballistic missiles; 2, to remove their capability to produce a nuclear weapon. But the third one, and they'll do those first 2 things, the third one is this issue of regime change. And I think what's happened overnight, over the last 24 hours, with the son of the former Supreme Leader being appointed as the new Supreme Leader, it's effectively flicking 2 fingers at Donald Trump and saying, we are just going to carry on. We are the government of Iran. We have a certain outlook on life, and no matter what you do to us, we're going to continue. And I think that's a pretty hard-line position to be. And if they're not going to budge and they're going to stand firm, then the only other party that could move is the Americans. And Donald Trump has got to ask himself, and listen to his polling, how long can he afford this to go on, with world energy prices rocketing up, disquiet growing right across the Gulf region? The opinion is going to start to coalesce around Donald Trump, and he may well have to decide to tail this thing off and back down.
I mean, I said at the beginning, and I said throughout the show today, whether you agree that we should have been involved initially or provided the bases, yes, they're our greatest ally, but you also have to look at, I mean, Blair jumped up at the weekend, didn't he, and said, you know, you should support it. Look at what happened in Iraq. There is scepticism amongst the British public, which is why I spend every day asking for our politicians to be open and tell the truth. Militarily, has he miscalculated, do you think, Trump, or not?
Well, I think the other major point about it is how did this thing start? I think it started because Mossad, the Israeli intelligence organization, saw that the Supreme Leader and his immediate cohort were all in one place at one time, Saturday before last, and they decided to strike. And that precipitated the campaign that's ongoing, probably been planned for quite some time between the Israelis and the Americans. So I'm not sure that Donald Trump was totally in control of when this thing started.
Well, so that's really interesting, because I read quite a lot that said that the Israelis were the dominant force initially, and that you're right. Well, of course you're right, for God's sake, you ran the British Army. That actually, instead of it being a war based on a decision to start at the right time for that, and in the end he's collateral damage, Khamenei. Actually, he was the reason to start it, and everything then fell into place, which makes it a more awkward situation. It's just that from this side of the pond or wherever we are, you see, what is it, day 10, you see fires raging and drones being shot down and bombs landing, and you just think the Gulf states are getting involved, and where do we go from here? And we've got, a Prime Minister who can't decide what his name is. And it's, I think for a lot of people, it's just quite a worrying time, isn't it?
It is a worrying time, and a lot of our fellow country people are marooned in the Middle East. They were trying to fly somewhere and have got stuck. There's a lot of people who've got plans to go on holiday, requiring flying through the Middle East. All that kind of thing is being upset. So this is impacting on quite a large section of our own people. And as energy prices start to go up, and we will be paying more for oil, for petrol and diesel on the forecourts, it'll start to affect everybody. So it's quite difficult to spot where the winners are in all this.
Yeah.
As I said right at the start of this conversation, the Iranians will be losers to the extent they will have their ballistic missile capability reduced. They'll be stopped getting a nuclear weapon, and those are good things. But I don't see regime change in any time soon, as far as Iran is concerned. And then there's the other aspect of our relationship with the United States. There's some reporting this morning that some Americans think that Donald Trump got it wrong by not giving the UK earlier warning about what was going to happen. But if you go back to what I was saying a moment or two ago, I think this started because the Israelis kicked it off and Donald Trump had to fall into line.
I never thought that I would be asking Lord Richard Dannett, the former head of the British Army, the next question. I've only got 1 minute, my friend. Whilst all of this is going on, army chiefs have launched a review into looking, because of gender-free changes, that could see men in the armed forces wearing makeup with long hair, hair extensions, painted nails and earrings. He used to run the British Army. Can you respond to that briefly?
Well, I ran the British Army 20 years ago, and things were different then. Maybe things have got to move on, but what you've just told me I find rather alarming.
Alarming, yeah. The world's on a precipice, Sir. Do you know what I mean? I can't believe the world's just changed that much. But it could be, as you said, that Starmer is right. It could be that Trump has been pushed into it by Israel. It's an ongoing situation. Just very quickly, it's not going to end quickly, is it?
Probably not, unless Trump decides that the cost of continuing is greater than the embarrassment of stopping. I think it'll go on for some time.
Massive calls over this side of the pond from Labour MPs to delay or cancel the King's state visit to America over the disrespectful Donald. Any news of that? That's what they're saying there. Labour MPs are saying, you can't go and see that horrible orange idiot, it's not fair, he's taken us into an illegal war, Keir. Tell him to do it. Of course, Starmer won't. He can't even tell anybody to tie his shoelaces up properly. But, yeah, thoughts over there?
I mean, our thoughts over here are that there is friction, we know, between Starmer and Trump. I don't know if you saw his Truth Social post over the weekend where he was like, don't bother. We don't need you. You can't just show up when we're already winning. So I think that King Charles is Britain's secret weapon here when it comes to maintaining relationships between our two countries. I think that if we want to continue to have a calm and peaceful and pleasant relationship, they need to put King Charles on an airplane, bring him over here and allow Trump to kiss the butt of the king that he loves and worships. Trump has loved the British royal family since he was a child. His mother had a scrapbook of Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret that she built as a child. So Trump grew up loving the royal family in his home. And it's the only way to maintain our special relationship.
Well, that's an interesting one, that special relationship, because somebody said to me the other day that the special relationship will survive two personalities because it's much deeper than that. I was utterly appalled, actually, because you know me, I'm a monarchist. The constitutional monarchy means that you don't get involved. And I remember when Starmer went to the Oval Office and kowtowed and had his letter, oh, come over here, I thought, oh my God. And it's the same as this. The king shouldn't be involved in this. The fact of the matter is, politically, these two are worlds apart. And you're right about the Truth Social thing. He said the United Kingdom, I'm not going to do the accent, once our great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. That tells me everything. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won them. But the truth is he hasn't already won them. But yeah, the king risks being dragged into this. But we need to talk about the other thing that you just brought up. Firstly, Meghan Markle has... No, she hasn't been dropped by Netflix. Don't be so awful. She's walked away so she can control her own career. I mean, she's going to go to Australia. First trip in 7 years. I mean, she's on the comeback trail, isn't she, Meghan?
I mean, well, good luck in Australia. It's my understanding that this is primarily a commercial venture. Yes, they'll pop in and see a charity or two because... Yeah. They've got to look like they've got this proximity to the British royal family, but she's expected to appear on some female-oriented podcasts and events, like following in Gwyneth Paltrow's footsteps.
Is that the one who's got a candle that smells of downstairs?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Heck,
brilliant.
Yeah, it is.
You're going to buy that, aren't you? Honestly, I don't mean to be rude or in any way. Why would you buy a candle that smells of downstairs? What's that all about?
I don't know. I'm not even, I would say something to you offline that I would not say to your poor listeners. They already heard Poppy popping off a second ago. So, I will keep it to myself. But what I will say is their popularity in Australia, I think they've misjudged this because in 2018, they did have a great response. The reaction was incredible. And it was the catalyst for Harry and Meghan making demands for the first time as working members of the royal family and insisting that they needed to step out of William and Catherine's shadow. But as of late 2025, their popularity in Australia, all-time low. So I think a lot of people are going to react like with a little bit of morbid curiosity, sure, but mostly they're going to be like, what the heck are they doing here?
I've got to be really honest, though. I was joking. I completely agree with you. And I'm going to read how stuck up and deranged this woman is. Meghan Markle has decided to cut ties with Netflix. No, you got fired. And this is her reason. After fearing that her jam brand was being held back by the channel. Imagine creating jam and going, oh, one of the biggest streamers in the world, Netflix, you're holding back my raspberry conserve. You really are, you horrible people. Ridiculous. Jesus.
Yeah, it's being described here, this brand severance, these two parting ways as the kiss of death. Saying, like, one expert here was talking about how it's just that nobody's going to trust working with her anymore because it's not just Netflix, it's Spotify. They referred to it as repeated breakdowns and how it leaves a repulsive scent in Hollywood. She carries a scent of high maintenance, disappointment, and that is a rat poison when executives are already gun shy, he said. So, no, I
Does
don't
anybody
think...
like her, Kins? Does anybody get on with her, apart from her long-suffering ginger husband?
I was going to say, I bet Harry does. I think her children probably are enamored by her. I'm sure she's a really great mom. But other than that, I don't know who truly likes this person.
Let's move it on to the continuing fallout from Epstein. Over the weekend, couple more stories. Andrew pictured with a young woman on his lap. It's being called, was it Ironville? Operation Ironville over here, the investigation into him. He's not on bail. We said this last week. This has been floated by many people. There are lots of people who think that this man... this is going to get worse and worse, and he's actually, I mean, Andrew Lodi said the other day he's on suicide watch, in effect, because this guy, he can't even go out the front door to ride a horse. But as more and more comes out, you just wonder, I'm sorry I go back there whenever we discuss it, you're telling me that the royal family didn't know the extent of this. It's beyond me. I think it is the most catastrophic time that this monarchy has ever faced. I really do.
I agree. And I think that that's why Commonwealth Day is so important, because this gives the king, a way to remind us of that soft power that they have and how important they truly can be.
I hate saying this to you, though, but I'm not, because you know what I feel, I just don't know whether even that Commonwealth message is going to cut through or even mean to people, because I think they're looking at it through the prism of, how much did you know about the Epstein files? And that's a real fear, really.
Well, I mean, I think you're right that with so much negative attention, it's going to be one of those rare moments where hopefully we're going to be enamored by the tradition, the 56 member state, everyone represented there. Hopefully we will be overwhelmed by how beautiful the event is and the King's speech, that we are distracted for a moment. But you're right, it's unfortunately weighing pretty heavy on everyone's heads and hearts.
Just to bring it in as well, just very quickly, two things that we talked about repeatedly. Princess Eugenie steps down from anti-slavery charities. It scrubs her from her website. You, me and Andrew spoke last week. I think these girls are up. Sorry, I think they're up to their neck in it as well. And Fergie's cruel and overt betrayal of the late Queen. Royal expert says ex-Duchess shamefully took advantage of her monarch as her years increased. And overnight she's been turned down for a $1.5 million deal to write her life story. Why doesn't she seriously... Yeah, apparently that's true. Why doesn't she just go... They're not going to get back. What is wrong with these people? You're going to have to take what's coming, man.
Well, let me just tell you this about Beatrice's charity. I mean, one of the causes that they championed against was sex trafficking. And it is clear that not just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor engaged with Jeffrey Epstein post-incarceration for being a sex predator, but Beatrice and Eugenie voluntarily associated with him as well. So, I mean, that's not a great look for any charity or member of the royal family, for that matter. But yeah, Fergie, take a chill pill. I mean, my goodness, find a friend, just plant yourself in the guest room or the guest house or the casita or whatever you need to do for a few weeks and lay low.
It's not going to happen. I mean, she's not like that, and it's just going to come back and bite them. I mean, the girls apparently still blindsided by the cancellation of their invite to Royal Ascot, but I'm so with you. I think they are up to their necks in it, and just a story that will not go away.
What about the BBC, by the way? Do they have a problem with the monarchy? They decided not to air one of the most important occasions in the royal calendar, which is the Commonwealth service. Let's get reaction from the brilliant former BBC star, Sally Jones. Good morning, Sally.
Morning, Mark.
Sally, these types of services may not get bumper ratings, but it's the job of the BBC to air them.
I really feel it is. It looks like a deliberate insult when a service as iconic that's been aired on the BBC Live for the last 37 years is unceremoniously dropped. It does look like a deliberate kick in the teeth. I know that my feeling is that the BBC is perhaps trying... Sorry about this, our carer's coming and going to see my husband.
Fair enough.
Yes, I do see it as the BBC perhaps trying to deflect attention away from their own troubles with the sort of accusations of wokeness, of bias and everything else. The problem is that by kicking another institution that people see is to some extent in crisis. They've had all these peccadillos with Prince Andrew's dreadful behaviour, with Prince Harry and Meghan. There have been appalling things happening. But the BBC doesn't do themselves any favours by using it almost cynically, really, to kick an institution which it sees as old-fashioned. It likes to think of itself as Republican. It sees my generation that are actually patriotic. Many of us love the royal family when they're doing good jobs. We don't think that they should have a free pass to behave as they like. But the BBC sees this as a way to sort of show themselves, I think, as sort of modern, up-to-date Republican. Of course, I mean, lots of the Commonwealth countries like Australia and others are looking at potential republicanism, but there's still the most enormous groundswell of soft power and love for the Commonwealth, for the royal family. And I think that the BBC are doing themselves a gross disservice. I was lucky enough to be in Antigua a couple of years ago, and through some miracle, I got a kind of audience with a couple of friends with the Governor-General at Government House in Antigua. And the most brilliant man called Sir Rodney Williams, who was apparently one of our old Queen's great favourites among the Governor-General, he absolutely radiated pride in being linked with the whole Commonwealth, with his friendship with the Queen. The idea that despite all the sort of overtures from the Chinese, who are stuffing in as much infrastructure and pretty much bribing Antigua to take on hotels and all the stuff that they're trying to build there, the Antiguans themselves still, I feel, have a great love for Britain, and much of this is through the soft power of things like the Commonwealth Service, that the sheer strength of character of an incredibly impressive man like Sir Rodney Williams, who was a great athlete and a doctor and a cabinet minister. And we meddle with this and we downgrade it at our peril. And I think the BBC should be made more aware of what so many of us feel like. Just because a few sort of pampered Islingtonians think, oh, well, the Commonwealth doesn't mean much. It really does. It's so many millions of people, 56 countries. I think it's desperately sad.
Well, indeed. And I wonder, I don't use the R word too often, Sally, but I wonder whether it's slightly racist to cancel the Commonwealth Service like this, because what is that service, Sally? It's a celebration of a community of nations. I just wonder whether part of this is ideological. There are figures at the BBC, Sally, who are ashamed of our colonial past and don't think too much of the Commonwealth.
I think many of them see it as sort of colonialism light. You know,
But isn't that an insult to our colonial cousins?
I do think that. I mean, the numbers of people still within all the old colonies, even the ones who are looking maybe at some stage towards the R word, there's immense loyalty. I mean, the BBC is so misguided to think that they can just, without thinking, downgrade it in aid of, you know, in favour of some inane property show or game show.
Escape to the country, I believe, is what it was.
I mean, I've nothing against Escape to the Country, but I know what I'd rather be watching on Commonwealth Day. And when you think of all the great dramatic moments as well, I mean, I know that it's slightly sort of trivial to see the royal family as a soap opera, but they do have a slightly, there is a sort of slight amusement value. And I remember when there was the sort of dreadful frigid standoff back in 2020 between the Prince and Princess of Wales and Harry and Meghan. I mean, you know, to anyone who's a royal watcher, that was absolutely irresistible. But I mean, the royal family and the Commonwealth are two of the sort of great binding institutions at a time, a very frightening and threatening time, when many of us are feeling uncertain, many of us are thinking, Lord, is World War III around the corner. The last thing we want to do is to try to weaken the links with the countries who've traditionally been some of our greatest supporters and who we, I hope, have also supported, and the more so now that it's no longer a sort of vassal relationship, but it's really one of equals and one of mutual respect, and we downgrade it at our peril.
Amen to that. Sally, we love having you on the show. We'll catch up soon. Sally Jones, former BBC star, who is furious about the BBC's decision not to air the Commonwealth Service, an annual occurrence. Over 3 decades we've been running that service on the TV airways, but the BBC wants to show a rerun instead. Well, what do we think the Prime Minister is going to be tackling this morning with his cabinet colleagues?
Well, the Prime Minister now clearly keen to get back to the cost of living, because the Middle East crisis has clearly, dominated for the past couple of weeks. And whilst, understandably and rightly, much of that focus has been on the situation in Iran, its neighbouring countries, and the United Kingdom's, quite frankly, dithering military response, that is now starting to have an impact back home as well. We're going to be seeing petrol prices skyrocket after oil barrels almost, passed through $100 yesterday. Then they have dipped down slightly, but the cost of living is really going to sort of take a bite here in the UK. So I would imagine that will form a large part of the political cabinet today. It's interesting, this cabinet, because it is not actually a full government cabinet as such, where you have civil servants present. It's very much political. So that probably speaks to the fact that there is going to be a heavy sort of Labour tint to it. I imagine we'll get some readout afterwards saying how this Labour government has done more than any other government in history to protect people's pockets in various ways. But the problem is that when Rachel Reeves stood up yesterday in the House of Commons saying that she was going to come forward with some action to protect people back in the UK, it was really quite thin gruel, I thought. For my readers and your listeners who are watching pump prices tick up and are seeing Rachel Reeves about to hike fuel duty, what was there? I mean, she's going to ask the Competition and Markets Authority to be more vigilant on the forecourts. I mean, it's just warm words, I think. And so, I'm sure we're going to get some language out of that. But whether or not actually it will make any bit of difference, I think is a different question.
Most definitely. A lot of my viewers and listeners, Jack, are really concerned about this forthcoming definition of Islamophobia. The government are hoping to sell it by calling it anti-Muslim hatred. Well, of course, no one's going to object to that. But if you look at the fine print, the small print, Daily Mail have got what they believe to be the expected details of this new law, Jack. Anti-Muslim hostility is now defined as crimes such as harassment towards Muslims or those perceived to be Islamic, as well as prejudicial stereotyping to promote hatred against them and unlawful discrimination. I mean, what is harassment when it's at home?
Well, this is the problem, because we already have laws in this country which protect against any sort of harassment, any sort of discrimination. What this seems to do is give a carve-out to Muslims, which therefore you'd expect would raise the bar in terms of any sort of behaviour from the rest of society.
Any criticism.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Nick Timothy, in his interview with you just now, hit the nail on the head, in which he said that this definition does conflate Muslims as an ethnicity and Islam as a religion, because the definition itself says that Muslims should not be targeted in any way because of their religion. Now, what is that going to mean in terms of the application? As Nick Timothy says, does that mean that a school cannot tell its pupils, for example, not to wear a hijab, not to pray during lesson time? You know, you can just imagine this definition being weaponized by the usual suspects to try and silence and gag behaviours in a free society. And so that is the real concern here. No other race or religion is this afforded to. And so I think that this has been haggled over for about a year now, this definition. It was in Labour's manifesto. They've already watered it down, because originally, obviously, it was going to be called Islamophobia. Big backlash from free speech campaigners. They sort of dressed it up as anti-Muslim hostility. The question now will be, what are the unintended consequences for this policy? Because at the moment, it does look like it's going to be one big bone of contention for a lot of people.
Anne Widdecombe is a former Home Office Minister, best-selling author and broadcaster. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning to you.
And we don't want to see children go hungry. We want a proper meal in their stomachs. You know as well as I do, they won't learn without it. But is that the government's job?
Well, the primary responsibility, obviously, for feeding children is that of the parents, and that is quite obvious. But it has been the case now for many, many years, I mean, going right back to my childhood, that children from poorer families could receive free lunches. And the benefit of that, of course, is that at least school lunches are halfway nutritious, and they're getting some proper nutrition. But the question is, when do you stop? I mean, we all remember in COVID, when as a supposedly temporary measure, the government allowed children to receive free meals during holidays as well as term time. And then, of course, everybody wanted that made permanent. So I think we do have to be very careful what we do. It is primarily parental responsibility. But equally, free school lunches are in a way part of the benefits system. And therefore, subject to exactly the same rules and decisions.
Well, Anne, as you know, this will stick in the craw to many of my viewers and listeners who work very hard. They're battling inflation, they're battling mortgages, rents, everything's going up, isn't it? And they take none too kindly to their taxes, subsidising other families who already receive welfare state support to feed their kids, and many will feel that we're doing it twice, therefore.
I don't think we're doing it twice. I do think you've got to be very careful how you apply the rules. And I do think, as I've already said, that primarily it's a parental responsibility, not a state responsibility.
Yeah.
The state is the fallback, not the primary provider. And the same at the very far end of the scale. The same goes for elderly care. We've now got into a position in this country where we think that the state is primarily responsible, and it's not. In other countries, they will actually means test families before they supply elder care. So coming back to the age group that we're dealing with now, I mean, it's much the same principle. The primary responsibility is with the parents. But obviously, there is a role for the state, a limited role, but there is a role for the state where there's genuine poverty.
Now, Anne, you left the Conservative Party and joined the Brexit Party to get Brexit done. You've been on the right side of history more than once in your political career. You have since backed Nigel Farage and Reform UK. What's your appraisal of the Reform UK project to date?
Well, we're obviously doing extremely well. We are ahead in all the opinion polls, and we've been there for about a year. So, in fact, we've been there for more than a year. Now, if any other party had maintained that sort of lead that consistently, everybody would just assume they were going into government. And I think it's very likely that we will. But we've got big challenges ahead, and we know it. We're putting together now a team. We've already started doing that and announced some of them. We need to look as if we've got a team that's ready to be a cabinet of the future, and the not too distant future, 3 years' time. We have to do that. We have to refine a lot of the policies. The direction of travel is clear enough, but we need to refine the policies that underpin them.
Would you like the party economic offer to be a little drier than it currently is, Anne? Some people would argue the Achilles heel, the soft underbelly of Nigel's plans are the economic ones.
I'm not sure that that's true, because essentially what Reform says is, that it's business and it's enterprise which actually pays for all the public services that we enjoy. And therefore you make the country attractive to inward investment. You try to stop the drain of people who are now leaving the country, of successful people leaving the country. And therefore you try to lower the taxes. Well, in fact, you do lower the taxes, both business and personal, in order to provide the growth. You can't have economic growth without lower taxes. Equally, we can't just sit down and say, Allah, Liz Truss, we're going to do it all in the first 5 minutes, because we're not.
Anne, wonderful to see you. Let me urge my viewers and listeners to sign up to your Substack. It really is one of the best, because the thing about you, Anne, you're out of politics, so you can actually say what you really think.
Yes, I can say what I really think, but I have to be very careful that when I'm saying what I think, that people don't assume that that's what Reform also thinks.
Massive, massive news. The Home Secretary has yielded to a request from the Met Police to ban pro-Iranian regime marches over the weekend in the capital. What's the story?
Well, the story on that is that she's basically, Shabana Mahmood has put the foot down, but they are, in a weird way, this is a weird counter argument, but I thought those marches were actually quite good. And they were good in the respect that the intelligence services could then take down whoever was at those marches and put them on a list. And I know for a fact, I've read articles that, MI5, MI6 were working together to use those in order to find out who those sleeper cells were and who was embedded within the community. Because we know that Iran has been putting sleeper cells into the United Kingdom for years, a lot of them via the small boat crisis. And interestingly, Shabana Mahmood just hasn't come up with something in regards to the asylum crisis that will ensue over what is happening in Iran right now. I went out to the embassy a couple days ago and I had a chat to an Iranian asylum seeker. Now, they're some of our highest when it comes to who's actually applying to come here. It's around 8,000 last year that came. And I think it begs a really morally dubious question. Do we take them in? Yes, they are fleeing from a genuinely war-torn, horrible place, but also, is this the type of person we want in the country? Someone who's seen a lot, someone who has experienced a lot of trauma. Let's just have a look at the asylum seeker that I did chat to outside the embassy. Can you just talk about why you decided to leave?
میگه ما میدونیم که تو پناهنده هستی. دلیلش چی بوده که کشور رو ول کردی اومدی اینجا؟
من زمانی که در ایران سیاسی منه شروع شده.
He said when I was in Iran I didn't have no security and I had an issue with the Revolutionary Guard. That's why I have to get away and to make myself free of all this trouble.
Yeah, that was and you didn't want to do that, but you decided to pay the people smuggler, get across the border. This is what, because of how horrible Iran was.
Yeah. ایران شرایطش ببین بکنیم هر مکان عمومی شما تعقیب میشید داخل ایران.
He says since you born in Iran, from school you've been suppressed and until you grow up. Each stage of your life, you don't have no freedom, and there is no right for anyone in there in Iran. He says we are a guest in your country, and as long as Iran get free, we immediately go back to our country. He loves his country and he wants to stay here. Even me. Even I'm not a refugee, I love to go back to Iran. We thought we are in trouble, but look at this country. Slowly they're taking over everything here. And the English are the second citizen in this country. Not anymore look like it's their country, even they're afraid to put their own flag up.
Now, that was a jaw-dropping moment at the end. This young man who is seeking asylum in the UK, an Iranian who is no friend of the regime.
No.
At least that's his position. Now, there was a lady there translating for him. Who was she? Because what she said at the end was amazing. But who was she?
Yeah, and there's a longer form video that's going to go out on YouTube about that. But she was an Iranian national. She seemed like quite a wealthy woman. She was living in Holland Park in Kensington, as she told me. And she came here about 20 years ago to
not
escape
an asylum
the regime.
seeker. She lives in the UK.
Yeah, not an asylum seeker. Raised her kids here. She said the standard for education is worse in England than it was when she was living in Iran. And she was she spoke very painfully about what happened and what has happened to our country. I sometimes think we discount the experience of some of these immigrants that came over 20 years ago who have seen the changing face of Britain. You know, she came over here when we were taking in, 5,000 to 10,000 immigrants per year, which is not mass migration by any extent. And I think she had some really powerful things to say, but she also said she'd return back to Iran if they were under a peaceful regime, and so did that asylum seeker. And I think that's what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to create an environment in which people want to stay in the country that they live in. And unfortunately, people like Keir Starmer, Shabana Mahmood, they want to keep these hostile regimes going for some reason, and we have to keep the inflow of Iranians.
Well, that lady, right, that she was speaking, now when she started to, I thought she'd be a bit woke.
Yeah,
and
she was not.
Towards the end of her remarks, she was speaking for herself, not translating this guy. She said that essentially Islamic extremists are taking over the UK.
Yes.
And she said that British people are second-class citizens in their own country. It takes a foreigner to show us what we're doing to ourselves.
It's outrageous, and I want to throw to a clip. This is a great segue, Mark. Thank you.
I try.
For Keir Starmer, because the hatred that they've got for Keir Starmer is palpable, because they understand what it's like to live under Iranian terror, Muslim extremism, and they are absolutely enraged with how Keir Starmer hasn't prescribed the IRGC as a terrorist organisation, hasn't kicked the ambassador out. You know, the embassy there is still operating. I saw people come in and out. Let's just have a quick look at what they had to say about Keir Starmer. Sorry, just quickly, would you just tell us how you feel about Keir Starmer? He's not been very supportive of you guys.
Yeah, he's not. I'm afraid he's not. While he has to, because we are living in his country and we have the right to get his support, to get his voice. But he has just keep his mouth shut and tells nothing about our country, the future of our country.
And no support from Keir.
No support from Keir, and Ayatollah Sadiq Khan. He does as well. He just, because we all know the police are getting suggestion from mayor. So basically, he just comes and says, oh, you cannot stay here, you're not allowed to use sound system, but it doesn't work for Palestinian, but only just coming pushing us. We are peacefully here. Every morning, I keep this, you see that road? Clean and tidy. Go look at the Palestinian protests. They attack police.
Well, brilliant reporting. Samara, before you go, briefly, if you can, with what's happening in Iran, there are going to be more asylum seekers in the months ahead.
Yes, there will be. And it begs the question, what do we do? I don't have an answer at this point. Unfortunately, the government certainly hasn't acted on this. We're seeing in Australia already issues with that when you look at the Iranian soccer team. These people have come from a terrible, terrible environment, and how can we check all of them? I don't know. We don't even have biometrics. Yeah. So it's a big question.
Well, listen, brilliant reporting. Look forward to our next on-air encounter. Samara Gill is Talk's lead breakfast reporter, soon to be replaced by Damien. I'm afraid. It's a tough business.
Good luck, Damien.
Can we get straight to it? As a former UK security minister, I want to ask you about our Prime Minister. Those files, partly released yesterday, would show that the Prime Minister was given evidence by the security services as to the danger of employing Peter Mandelson. As a security professional, how does it make you feel when politicians blatantly ignore the advice given?
Well, ministers have the privilege of taking the decision. I think the Prime Minister on this occasion, was very much wanted to appoint Mandelson, and from all that you can gather about the process that occurred, it was fairly perfunctory and was designed, I think, in the Prime Minister's mind to reassure him that there was nothing that was so difficult to accept that he couldn't appoint him. In other words, he was doing a sort of check, which am I right in thinking I can do this, rather than what do I need to know, and am I certain that I've got all the information? So I think an attitude of mind was part of the problem, and I think from what Jonathan Powell, who knows the system, said, he was very surprised that it was perfunctory. So I think if a Prime Minister gives an order that he wants a quick job done, which sounds as though that was the case, I mean, that's likely to be the result. And in any case, he was given the very clear signal that there was reputational risk. So anybody who's appointing somebody to a high-profile job of extreme importance to the country, and is prepared to take that without proper investigation, I mean, is not doing their job.
What does it say about his judgment to you, Pauline?
Well, I think it's a failure of judgment.
I don't want to ask you to become too political, but every single newspaper, Kemi Badenoch saying it this morning, is he done in your eyes?
Well, it takes quite a lot to do a Prime Minister. I mean, I think as and when that judgment comes, it'll be one of the things that weighs in the balance.
Yeah. I just want to ask you, as a former security minister, I really this whole march rubbish that's on page 15 this morning, pro-Iranian march, initially banned by Shabana Mahmood on Saturday. We now face the ludicrous, and this is proven to be true, this is in the Mail this morning, it's being verified, and I'd love your take on this. A pro-Iranian rally in London will take place, after all, as a static protest. Shabana Mahmood confirmed that she was powerless to block it from going ahead. The Home Secretary approved a Metropolitan Police request to prohibit the annual Al-Quds Day on Sunday to prevent serious public disorder, but a static demonstration based in a single location gets past that and can go ahead. That makes a mockery of almost everything that we believe in, doesn't it, Pauline?
Well, I think what we've got there is a gap in the law. Clearly, what we've done over the years is we used to have pretty lax and pretty minimal legislation on the subject of public rallies, because we had a society that wasn't so inclined to demonstrate against each other and demonstrate the causes that are really contrary to what we actually believe in as a society. So now we have a situation in which the law has been gradually tightened, and I expect that legislation talks about marches and didn't include people standing still. So now they found a gap in the law and they're going to exploit it. We'll have to close that gap. I disapprove extremely strongly of this demonstration, which doesn't stand for anything that the UK believes in.
That's my point. I completely agree with you. I'm 60 years of age and I've started to wonder what the UK stands for. I don't understand, and I know people will always throw the statute book at me, how a person who is, the leading politician in the Home Office with a a really strong majority in the House of Lords, and we know this, they did it with British Steel. They could bring in a law within 24 hours. There has to be the will to do this. I think it's dangerous. I think you have to live in a society, I get this, where everybody has a right to protest and have their say, but the danger is that when some of that becomes violent and what it means and what it leads to, then we need to be able to take action against those people.
Well, again, I have no doubt, but I think that the action that's going to follow is that this gap in the law is going to be closed, and it'll be closed pretty fast. It's very important, however, you know, that authority in our society does actually obey the law as it stands. And if there's been a failure of lawmaking, that's to say this is a gap that we should have spotted and should have been closed by Parliament, and then by the legislative drafters as well. This is the result you get when people want to exploit the freedoms of our society for causes which don't belong to a free society.
Completely agree.
And so, we got to learn from this, and we mustn't let this kind of thing happen again. But we can stop it, and we must stop it. You're quite right.
Final question for you. Delightful to have you on. How big is the threat of Iranian terrorism on UK soil? Because some people will say these marches are part of that, and we should be clamping down for that reason.
Sorry, I missed that.
How big a threat from Iranian terrorists is there to the United Kingdom population?
They are a threat. They are a threat in our society. They have, the Iranian terrorists have actually tried to kill people in our society. They are a threat. This is no idle bunch of people, who've just got a cause. These are people who actually are a threat. So this is a real problem. I'm not saying everybody who's on that march is a threat, but certainly there are people behind it who are a threat.
But I think that just to
be taken seriously.
I think just to finish, that's the point. We've lived it under governments and a system that says there will be people on that march who are peacefully making their point. But we need to also accept that there are people on that march whose motivation is very different, and that's why the law needs to change. Well, let's start slightly differently with Meghan Markle. I don't know your views on Meghan Markle. I'd love to, but so low has the bar been reached now that having lost their Netflix deal, she's going to a wellness retreat in Australia where for 1,400 quid you can learn about her experiences as a working mother. I don't mean to be rude, Andrew, I really don't, but how far has the monarchy fallen? Forgetting Epstein a minute, if a duchess is selling, it's a bit like meet me at the supermarket for 35 quid, isn't it? It's awful.
Yes, well, I mean, we've had this with Fergie for about 40 years, and I think the monarchy needs to sort of get its act together and actually, put some pressure on these people, because if they are members of the royal family, this is not the way to act. And I think this is just a good example of why we need to get rid of titles for anyone except the direct line, and for the royal family to cut these people loose, let them go off and do things, but not monetize their royal status to do so.
I've never been in more agreement with you. I don't understand that if you want to. I mean, it's quite supportive when they wanted to leave, right? Go, but the minute they landed in America with a $112 million Spotify deal, I'm thinking to myself, I thought you were leaving because you didn't like the intrusion, and you're making money out of slagging off the very thing that you say you don't want to be part of. And actually then we can bring it to Fergie and the girls. Talking more about the Andrew situation, I have loads of questions about him. You said to me on Monday, she's undoubtedly in trouble, but the girls as well. And more seems to come out about how different parts of the royal family have monetised and used their connections to feather their own nests, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been going on for 40 years. I mean, Fergie was doing it, doing interviews with Hello shortly after she got married. And the palace did nothing. And I think they've just been more and more confident, some of these royals, that they can do this. But it, as you say, it undermines totally the reputation of the monarchy. I think the monarchy needs to, or the palace needs to be much tougher with these people, because it does undermine any respect for the institution.
And I do think that word's really important, the institution, because I think it's in real crisis. There was a Commonwealth service, I don't know if you saw this lip reader, I don't know, professional lip readers worry me really, I have to keep my mouth shut. She swears by the fact that Prince William told Prince Anne, I've had enough of hearing his damn name, referring to Andrew, which would be easily verifiable. Do you hold some store that the monarchy could survive in that man's hands, William, once all of this mess is gone?
Yes, I think he has a very clear idea of what needs to be done, and it has to be quite drastic. In fact, Norman Baker, a former Liberal MP, and I are beginning a campaign, which I hope maybe you will help us with, to introduce integrity into public life, proper accountability and transparency into the royal family. We have a whole series of things that we're suggesting that they could do and will have to do if they want to command any continuing respect and trust. It's not rocket science, but they do need to grasp the nettle in a way that they haven't so far.
And I think there's of course I'll throw my support behind. I know Norman really well, and actually I think the transparency thing is really important, because I think it's now or never, Andrew. I don't think the British public are not going to be... I just think there's going to need to be more explanation. For example, right, Andrew, wood farm, right, out of public way, but subsidised still by his brother, who's providing him with a chef and a valet. Now, if you try explaining to hard-working Brits that a man whose best friend was a paedophile, and there are accusations that Andrew could well have been involved in underage girls, they're going, so why am I going to work when this disgusting Lothario is being paid to have a life of luxury? That's the problem.
Yes, no, I mean, and I think we need to get, for example, Beatrice and Eugenie out of subsidised accommodation in royal palaces when they have no working role as royals. I think the thing that's worrying me is that on one hand, the palace is saying that they will cooperate with the police and the law must follow its course. And yet I'm hearing stories of civil servants, for example, involved with Andrew, being reminded of their obligations of confidentiality. We had this in December with some of the policemen who've been involved in protection. Now we're getting it with civil servants. And I'm finding that people are still reluctant to talk because of pressure they're having behind the scenes. This doesn't suggest a full and open investigation. So
but that's the interesting thing, right? You're absolutely right. The cracks will appear, but there will still be this sort of wall of silence that needs breaking. Who's telling them to keep quiet? Because it's all out there, isn't it, Andrew? Who's saying you can't tell us the truth?
Well, this is coming from their superiors, and they're worried about their pensions and other things. So this is coming from senior civil servants to other civil servants who are involved in dealing with Andrew. I mean, what's fascinating is behind the scenes, they'll talk about, everyone knew about the problems of Andrew, but no one seems, as you say, prepared to go public on it, which is why I think we do need this parliamentary investigation. And a lot of these people, the former heads of UKTI, know everything, but they've refused to talk to anyone up till now. I think they have an obligation, not just to their own conscience, but to the public, to actually come clean about what was going on. I've got stories of diplomats supplying escorts for Andrew on his trips abroad.
It's just like, you're telling me that people... It's really interesting, isn't it? Because those people who are keeping quiet for whatever reasons, it will come out. That's the beauty of what you do. That's the beauty of a media that wants to find out stuff that the nation should know about. The media has been criticised rightly in the past. This is a story that needs to be... I've just had a text from somebody who said, I love listening to Eugenie. Could he answer this? If the British taxpayer is indirectly subsidising the royal family, we're therefore paying for Andrew's current lifestyle. Does Andrew Loney think that the ex-Duke of York has literally become part of Benefits Britain?
Yes, he has, absolutely, and he has for a long time. I mean, I think that's what's so extraordinary, that on these trips as a trade envoy, he was booking in a week's holiday off the back of the taxpayer, staying in hotels that we paid for, travel paid for by us. So you were talking about the immigrants coming here for their 40,000, but he's cost us far more than that if you look at it over 10 years.
And what does he return? I mean, there's an extraordinary story today, which is why I wanted you on. There's a guy called Lex Wexner who basically was the boss of Victoria's Secret, the underwear and lingerie firm. He became very close friends with Epstein. He actually sold Epstein the now famous Lolita Express. He's been in front of Congress in the US following the release of the Epstein files, following on from the Clintons who were called. Yesterday he let it out that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor pretended to be a second-hand plane salesman to Lex Wexner, boasting that he'd help his mum, the Queen, buy a private jet off him. I mean, the more you hear this, it's extraordinary, Andrew.
Well, he was a bit of a fantasist, but actually that's true. He did actually help buy one of the, I think it was a helicopter actually for the Queen's flight. So yes, he was used. I mean, he did know about helicopters, so that seems fair enough. But yes, he was busy hawking himself in the way that Fergie was hawking herself around businessmen. I mean, she had even less to offer than he had, but they were hanging around business meetings, picking up business cards, and that's exactly what the daughters have done.
Can I ask you a question that came to me the other day after we'd finished speaking? And I do try and put all sides. And somebody had said to me off air the other day, they understand what Andrew is and what he's done, but is the pylon... Is it enough now? What's, you know, listen, I'm on your side, but I always have to put both sides. Do we not, or should we not be cutting him some slack now? What about his mental situation is what this person said.
Well, I mean, I have inquired about his mental health, and I mean, he's not at all remorseful. He's not at all suffering in any way. I mean, he's more obsessed with where he's going to park his cars and why the horses aren't on his doorstep to go riding, and all the frustrations of being chaperoned. So I wouldn't feel too sorry for him. And there's a lot more still to come out about him and the rest of the family, which I think will shock people.
It just doesn't go away, does it? This whole royal debacle. There's a story out today that I think, you know, and Andrew Loney has gone on and on about the Yorks and talked incessantly about how Fergie needs to be questioned and how the girls have been and should be dragged into this. We heard overnight, Angela, that Beatrice and Eugenie still have homes in royal palaces, that their father, the disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, signed deals on the home which are let for far less than their market value. This can't go on, can it?
Well, it's been going on for an extremely long time. I don't listen very much to what he's saying because I know it's not always true. But this with Beatrice and Eugenie, it goes right back for a long time. I mean, originally, Andrew would absolutely fight with Charles about them having 24/7 people looking after them. You know, it cost us £500,000 annually, right? And the whole thing about the money was what Andrew was fighting for them. He doesn't want them to pay for anything that they have. He does like his children very much, but then you would think he would behave in a better way. So with Beatrice, she's got
an apartment in St James's Palace, and Eugenie has Ivy Cottage, a 3-bedroom property at Kensington Palace.
Yes. It's difficult to know exactly how much it costs because people don't know exactly how many rooms there are other than the bedrooms. But they have had that where they pop in and stay. Sometimes it's useful to do something near the Buckingham Palace, but other times it's just what they have. But one of the things that really upset me is that people that Andrew worked with gave him money to give to the children, and this was absolutely masses of money, and I think that's disgusting. They should never have taken it, however old they are, and Andrew shouldn't have given it to them.
Well, this is with, I know you said you don't believe everything he says, but this is what Andrew Lowney, to his credit, has said for years, that this goes beyond Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His wife has been on the take, and these kids, and Angela, when I first started talking about this, I thought they were young when they were taken to Epstein by Fergie. Yes. They were 18 and 20. There has to be, I'm afraid, be some knowledge of what's gone on by these girls, which means by implication they have been dragged into, through their naivety or whatever, into the same web of lies that their parents are facing, you know, the reality of explaining.
I agree totally with you. I thought they were little kids, you know, 7, 8 or something like that, where it doesn't matter. But to that age, they must have known exactly what was going on, how they could go to a party when he was five days after he came out of prison, and actually spend a few days with him. My God, you know, if I had my children, I wouldn't let them go anywhere near him. I wouldn't take them near.
To a
And
paedophile,
night.
Fergie. To a known, convicted paedophile. But these girls, I'm really sorry, I've nothing against them personally, but I think they are up to their necks in. And I go back, and you know I'm a royalist, you're a royalist. I think the king is going to be in ever-increasing trouble. I mean, I know a lot of people say, some people say, oh, Andrew, he's had enough, he's stuck in Wood Farm and he can't ride his horses and he can't go out. Try telling that to working Brits, that this guy's got a chef and a valet. I think the king, Angela, is going to get tremendous grief if he continues to fund Andrew's lifestyle.
Well, they've been trying to get their mother not to write her a book about the royal family. I'm not saying that changes anything, but they're apparently pleading with her, crying to her not to do it. Now, can you recommend a woman who would behave like that with her children? It is disgusting. They might be trying, but you can't change something you did when you were 20. That's not a thing that you can do. And I think that Beatrice, her husband's family, are absolutely furious with him to have married somebody like this. So there might be some problem.
Really?
Yes, they're sort of got the sort of royalty in Japan with around the family, and they're absolutely furious with him. We haven't seen him. He's gone off somewhere.
Is this Brookshire? Which one is that?
What do you mean? Which?
Is that Eduardo one? Is
yes,
it? Yes.
Yes. Him.
Yes, he's actually got links to the royal family in Italy. You're absolutely right on that. And to be fair, I mean the whole thing. It just, and I include the girls now, it just stinks, and the damage that it spreads out. I mean, listen, we've had this conversation before, and I'll keep saying it. I think for our beloved monarchy, the further this goes on, the only way it can be saved is by the king falling on his sword, blaming his diagnosis, and letting his son start with a clean slate. And I hate to say it, but I think that might be the only way forward, Angela.
I don't actually. I think that he can do it, but it's very difficult to do it for your nieces, to do it for the people you love within your family. But I think that I've been told that he takes no notice of Harry and Meghan at all anymore. So that's something big.
Actually, I must get a comment. I thought we could go through a whole 8 minutes without mentioning that odious woman, but I'm going to give this to you. I've decided to buy you a present, Angela. I'm sending you to Australia. It's cost me 1,700 quid, and you are going to spend a weekend at a wellness clinic, drinking juices, doing stretches in your leggings, and you're going to get Meghan Markle speaking to you and inspiring you to be a better person. How are you feeling?
I feel that's wonderful. I use my married name so they wouldn't know that it's me. I'd get there.
How low could she sink? Seriously.
I know. Well, she is beyond any hope. She thinks she's so wonderful, and that's net. And you know what the last prize is? Actually having a photograph of her. That's what she's giving as a present. Now, can you imagine anybody actually saying that about themselves?
I had a great weekend. I went all the way to Australia, and I had a photo with Meghan Markle. I'd rather get measles.
Yeah, well, I remember all the awful things she did when she went to Australia in 2018. And actually, I've got several people who, like me, who read what I say, and they're from Australia, and they've written to me and said, please, Angela, stop her coming. We don't like her. We don't like her. We don't want her here. Well, please stop it. Well, I can't do that. But she's not popular. And to ask for that sort of money is a total, utter disgrace, because she thinks she's so wonderful. She knows what she's doing with this money, the talk, the conversation. It's about all the things she's done with Netflix.
Jam.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Jam.
Yeah, but all the things, how she's managed this and how she's done podcasts, who wants that?
Well, you do, you're going, because I bought you that present. Angela Levin, we really appreciate you being on. It's a British airbase in Iraq overnight under attack from Iranian drones. Our Defence Secretary Ian John Healey saying that Putin's hidden hands are behind the attack. It's about time, is it not, that our government started to take seriously our involvement or the impact on this country?
Absolutely, indeed. The reality that we know now is Putin is very involved in this. We're absolutely certain he's shipping equipment, drones, etc., to Iran to keep them in the fight. And that is, of course, also damaging the oil supply, which means that his prices go up, which means he benefits ultimately as a result of being able to get more money for his oil and thus sustain his war on Ukraine. So the whole thing has got him and the others involved. And the question really to what degree we can carry on behaving like this. We should have seized his money by now, which is over 300 billion, to make sure that we actually gave that money to Ukraine to be able to mount the war that they have to in defense, getting the right sort of missiles, etc., and equipment to be able to stop the Russian brutal war.
Ian, your experience, you were a party leader, Conservatives, you'd have been involved in classified information. Do you think, in your experience, that this situation is going to get bigger and bigger and more countries are going to be becoming involved? We've heard in the last couple of days Trump sort of saying it's one. People are saying the Iranians are actually getting equipment from Russia. They want everybody dragged in. Where do you see this going?
Well, it's... The Americans started this on the basis that they would be able to knock out the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, who are a brutal group. They're the ones that are probably, I always describe them as the SS of the Iranian government. They are the brutal enforcers. And the key to this is, I don't think America can cease this now until they have crushed the IRGC's ability to make war and also to suppress their own population. If they pull out any time before that, then this whole thing, I think, will have been a terrible waste. But if they succeed in doing that, and they say they can, then what they will allow is therefore both changes in government to take place in there and no longer be suppressed, but also, more importantly, to finally get rid of a terrible threat to Western interests. Look at the way they're behaving over the Strait of Hormuz, trying to make sure that the oil prices go up, deliberately attacking countries that hadn't been directly involved in any of this. This is literally a state that is an absolute terrible threat to the whole of the Western alliance. And I think we have to make sure that America does its job and doesn't get out before then.
Lots of things to ask you about yesterday. Prime Minister Starmer finally taking full responsibility for appointing Mandelson. Your leader, Kemi Badenoch, saying that he's lied and lied and lied. You've done this. I don't know whether I'm missing the point. I can't believe his comms people are so stupid and thick. You put your Prime Minister to apologise to victims of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal in a community centre surrounded by screaming children. Again, and he looks so awkward. But I ask you this seriously. Boris Johnson was brought down because it was proven that he'd misled the House. Is it not fair to say that our own Prime Minister has done exactly the same and the same fate should befall him, Ian?
Well, I think Kemi's made that absolutely clear, and I agree with her, Kemi Badenoch. She's made it very clear that he has not told the truth. And the reality is, if you go back to his statement to the House on the 10th of September, where he says that he was essentially, they'd carried out the right checks, he never went any further because he would have known at that stage that the man, because you can see it in the documents, that he was already made aware that this man had carried out appalling engagements with Epstein and that Mandelson should not have been appointed. His own side, even his own side, were saying this is a mistake too, and the civil service were doing as well. But he went ahead with it.
Why? Any idea why? On a serious note, you led a party. Why would you make a decision that my 2-year-old wouldn't make? It doesn't. It only says to me, and people say, "Oh, Jez, you can't say that." I don't know how much Mandelson's got on all of them, but there can be no common sense in making Mandelson the US ambassador from the UK. There can't be.
No, there never was. In fact, you didn't even need these checks to take place to know that this is a man whose attraction to money and people with money has become dodgy and dangerous. You know, there's all these stuff now to come out yet about his arrangement with the people that they represented in the company that he set up after he left government, which you can argue was a lobbying company or was certainly an advisory company. But these are some very dodgy people and some very dodgy money and heavily involved in Chinese money as well. And we've seen what China is doing in spying in the UK endlessly. All of these, but then add to that the fact that twice he has to be got rid of from government, from senior positions, because he is deeply unreliable. And Mandelson's then arrival in this government was an utter disaster, and that was down solely to one person. Well, actually, not one person, but some people around him who also agreed, and his chief of staff and others, his communications director, who lately got a peerage after that, who then had to be kicked out of the House of Lords for his involvement with supporting a paedophile. You couldn't make this up.
No.
And McSweeney was the one that he left, and his communications director. He left those two to do the final questioning, which is an absolute absurdity. He should have either accepted the advice or he should have questioned directly himself, but he still bears responsibility for his failure, and this is a disaster. He's done it, there's no question, because he was determined to get him.
Do you know what's really interesting? And we haven't got much time, and I wish I had more. I mean, it's not. It's not even a case of saying, "Is this the end of him?" Everybody knows he's a dead man walking. But I am really strong on this. I was very supportive of Johnson and very angry with Boris Johnson in the end. The same has to apply. I've got a clip that I won't play now, but in 2022, the man's a liar. He needs to come to the House. He needs to be sacked. He needs to resign. Exactly the same thing should befall Keir Starmer if there is any justice in this political system, shouldn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, you cannot essentially mislead the House. That is something which is the ultimate for a member of Parliament: to mislead the House, not to tell them the truth of the House about something that has happened. You know, you have to look at previous defence secretaries and others that have been kicked out. All of this happens now. The baying and the crying at the time of Boris Johnson was unbelievable from the left, from the Labour Party at the time, shouting, screaming, attacking him personally, all this sort of stuff, and he went. So that's what happens. But this time round, there's silence from the massed ranks of the Labour Party. You have a huge majority, bigger than anything that we've had, and they have gone completely quiet. So he stumbles on because they are allowing him to stumble on, but it's doing Britain no good. And it's doing the reputation of Parliament no good. The other night, for example, they did some stupid, childish things to delay a vote, literally like sitting in the chamber. You know, this is the Labour chief whip and others, and not coming out in the hope that we'd go past 7 o'clock, whereupon the vote wouldn't count and it could be deferred to some other. I mean, you can't make this up. The Speaker's gone apoplectic. This is what we've got in government now. A government made up of angry people when it suits them, but people who aren't loyal to their country in the terms of doing what is necessary. He should not be there.